It's always better if you know where somebody's coming from and a bit of the background. So perhaps, much as I'm loath to, I better explain how FAIR came about. It wasn't just one morning waking up and going, what do I do today? I think I'll save the world from an asteroid. No, it was a long and involved story, and it was kind of serendipitous and a lot of coincidences. But if I explain it, then you perhaps know why I consider this to be my life's biggest achievement, although in anybody else's eyes, like the bar, was a financial failure. However, I'm not going to be deterred from that. Here we go. Where do we start? At the beginning. All right. I've already explained how I got the internet to the island, but to explain what the internet was like back then, I had to dial long distance to Athens. It wasn't even a local call, it was expensive, so I wouldn't stay on. I couldn't stay online. I couldn't afford that. So I'd turn on every now and again when I accumulated a few emails from people who came in and da-da-da-da. And then, every hour or so, and if people wanted to go and read the news online, then they would pay as per the meter of the reloi, the clock. That's how primitive we were. And it was, it wasn't even digital in those first few years. So bear that in mind, right? This perspective of having internet on the island where everybody had said, we got a fax and this is a gimmick for kids, and forget all that. Right? So I had my background in journalism and then marketing and advertising, and I'm now sitting in my little office down behind the port on Idra, right? And I've been there for a couple of years now, and the American tourists come in, wow, what an amazing thing, and I just loved it. It didn't matter that it was so primitive compared to today. And I really only had an idea of what, not really, but I remember there's something called defragging. And to this day, even the kids know what's defragging. But people were so impressed. I can't use the computer at the moment, and this little thing again was reducing files or something. And so I became known on the island as this quiz. But it took a long time. Anyway, the bottom line is I'm still amazed by this. And I start to get this feeling of the internet is now being used. I'm now doing the same shit as everything else before. Now, I'm going to go back to this. So one of the things I can do in the office is I can put on my music and I can read things, right? And the news is at the moment is like this Bill Clinton fellow is being held up for a blowjob. They want to lock him up. They want to impeach the fellow. And he had an affair with a woman didn't have it. And I looked at a guy called Kenneth Starr. I just remember the name, and he would say something, it's cost 40 million. Now, this is the 90s, right? And here's a man who, because he didn't go home and say to his wife, by the way, I had a little old fiddle in the Oval Office today. No, he didn't. For that. And the reason I was so pissed off is because Clinton was one of my heroes, because when the Berlin Wall came down and everything changed and the odd jobs evaporated, and with all the influx of refugees, or not refugees, but Eastern Europeans and stuff. And I was getting older and all sorts of stuff, so I thought I'll try my hand at journalism. Anyway, fucking some dick in a helicopter lands on a little rock somewhere between Turkey and Greece, right? Or something in the island, and he plants a Turkish flag. Okay? And there wasn't a house in it, there wasn't inhabited. I doubt it could even support a rabbit. Anyway, this got into the press, and suddenly, if you've ever been in a country that mobilizes, there's a different atmosphere. It's a horrible atmosphere. Things just, you can feel it in the air. And Turkey had mobilized, and Greece was mobilized. Now they're both NATO members, for fuck's sake. And it's about this guy who planted a flag on a Greek island, and so on and so on. So I thought, and they're fully armed planes doing mock dogfights, but I'm going to fuck this for a lot. And in usual fashion, the only thing I could do in those days, this is before the internet, this is going back to Clinton, right? I wrote to the Athens News. The only thing we had was the daily national or weekly national that we had in Greece at the time. And all I said is basically something along the lines of, I remember the Falkland War was compared as being ridiculous in two bald men fighting over a comb. So I wrote something very clever like, surely this is two guys, blind men squabbling over a magnifying glass because you couldn't find this fucking thing on a map. Anyway, I got taken to task. One of the old expats came out, David, you really shouldn't be political waters here. And nobody supported what I said, but what I'm trying to do is stop two countries from fucking annihilating each other. And they're both NATO members. I couldn't believe it. Anyway, it stopped like that. And you know how it stopped? My hero, Clinton was the president. He went along and he said, you fuckers, I'll tell you what's going on here. I know you've got a squabble. I don't know all the ins and outs of who drew what border when, but here's the deal. The first guy to fire a shot, I'm on the other guy's side. Bravo, Mr. Clinton. Big boy killing blank. So, get back to this. So I thought, I'm at home, and I had CNN, and nobody had internet. And I was incensed, and I thought, Mr. Clinton, so I went down, and I put this thing on a floppy disk. I had a little thing, old little laptop at home, on a floppy, the fine little thing, office the next day, stuck it in to Time magazine, because it was, I had these friends, Brian and Valerie, who gave me these Time magazines when they ran out sometimes. Not when they ran out, when they were finished with them, they very kindly passed them on. And I forgot all about it. I wrote something about what are the capital hill of beans, amounts to nothing, and really just was a big... I forgot. A few weeks later, maybe a month, and Brian phones me up. He says, Jesus, David Fagan Hedra's in Time magazine. I said, what? Yeah, you said something about the Clinton blowjob. Now, I wasn't elated or anything. I was actually more shocked. I went, fuck me, I should know this. I was a journalist, but this is proof of the power of the internet, man. I could have said, your man's a plonker, and I would have regretted it. I'm glad I stand by what I said, but... So I had all these things that came to me. So when the story's now on, blah, 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 fast forward, I see this thing in Time magazine a few years later, and that goes along. But I launched FAIR, and then more proof of why the internet is so powerful. 2004, we were having the Olympics in Greece, right? And it was like running behind schedule, and they were even talking about moving it back to Barcelona, and so on. Anyway, 2004, a lot of people were coming to Hydra. Anyway, I'd written this first little book, my first little book called Rhubarbs, Escaped the Rat Race, which is what I'd done. And this guy called Mike Bushell writes to me, internet, and he says, I've seen your little book, I read a little bit about it, and maybe you can help me. I'm from the BBC World, my name is Mike Bushell, I'm coming with a team, and we're coming for the Olympics that we're going to cover, and we want to go somewhere rural. We want to do a little bit of rural scenes and to introduce Greece. So I said, absolutely, I'm your man. And long story short, I said, he said, well, we're going to come and we want to do this and we want to do that. The end of the day is he came to the island. I'd arranged for my mate with a water taxi to pick him up. I said, you don't go on a dolphin, we can do that for you. And I said, yeah, we became sort of mates. And then I said to him, we got another donkey man. I said, even take him for a little tour, the camera around. We got on the donkeys around the port. I got the mayor, he was a mate, and he said, yeah, interview with them, and did the whole thing. And then even like the Taverna. Now, all these things, this is where I wonder if I'm right or wrong. I knew what I was doing, right? Remember, this is the Olympic Games, and this is BBC World, and they want to do a documentary like for the opening of the Olympics, the biggest event. It's like there were 1 billion people or something who are going to watch it. And I remember thinking, what a way we can promote our island. If we don't handle this, BBC can go away and say, these fucking plonkers are a bunch of shysters, etc., etc. I said, no, treat them well, they're going to look after our island, right? I know this, I was a journalist, I'm marketing, this is so valuable. And I was so thrilled, and Mike and I got on there. We just had a wonderful day, right? And we filmed all sorts of things. And along the way, I said to all the Greeks on the island, my friends, I said, come to the plate. They were going to go to the plaka tonight, but they wanted, because we're talking, I told them we didn't have to throw plates on the plaka, you can do it here. So we're going to do it here. Oh, no, Oshi. We don't throw plates anymore, we throw flowers. And I said, look, mate, that's all very well. Yes, you're trying to indicate them, and, we're trying to plates. No. I said, look, this is going to be seen. Your little tavern is going to be seen in Tokyo and Vancouver and Cape Town and Oslo by millions and millions of people. Fuck the flowers. Bring a few old chip plates out, and we'll do the bazooki dunk dunk dunk, put on the music, and then, oh, okay, and you give them lunch. Yes, no, you give them lunch. Fuck, do you know they advertise? Okay, eventually. But we had a laugh. They did it nicely. The same with the water taxi, the same with the donkey man. Nico said, I said, hey, tomorrow we're going to see you on the television. The whole world's going to see you and your malaria, and I forget the names of them, walking around town with your moustache. TJ, fucking daughter. You want to charge him something? No. I said, if you charge him, maybe you won't be on television. Now, anyway, bottom line is, it was. I became mates. They decided not to film anywhere else in rural Greece. They only filmed Hydra, interviewed, full day filming everywhere in taxis. Had a wonderful time, so much so that a year later Mike came back to the island and he did a run-up of what Greece was like a year afterwards. Another side of the story. My point was, I remember this being the power of the internet, but how people didn't get it. I said, I didn't mind, I didn't expect to thank you, but I had got Hydra on BBC World, one of the only two, CNN International and BBC World, that went all over the globe for a full minute, and all my friends and little Harriet was dancing with them, and we were there in the middle of it, and it promoted Hydra, and the mayor gave a speech, and I thought, guys, this advertising, I said, the Super Bowl, huh? What do you think a 30-second advert costs in the Super Bowl for 500,000 people or 200,000 people, 200 million people or something to watch? This is that costs millions for an advert, the Super Bowl. There. This is Doro. And then afterwards, I thought that was good. They bravo, everybody, oh yeah. And I said, then came the other thing that surprised me. Oh, so Connie, how much did you earn? I said, what do you mean earn? I said, no, I told you I wasn't getting anything. You guys did it for nothing. This was Doro. That's how we got there. Why didn't you charge them? Ingeborg, a dear friend of mine, she's a journalist. She traveled the world. She said, why didn't you charge them? I said, because you're a journalist. Well, if I charged them and it had a shit time, at least I was able to guide what they were filming and make sure that it was. That's what a production manager was. I've never been one, but it's just fucking logical. So, it worked. And then they were saying, well, you should have charged. And then I'm going all noble and high and mighty. No, we didn't. We got all this millions worth. And the guy came back and we became a special island. And the island became very popular, didn't it? Nothing to do with me, but too expensive to live there now. But anyway, that was me in the internet. And again, there's islanders. Nobody understood why I was doing it. And it wasn't anything for me. It was for the island. It was a little gift. And I didn't mind that I wasn't going to get a thank you, but to be almost, not accused, but to me it was like an accusation of how much did I charge and what scheme was I into and what was in it for me. It wasn't for me, it was for the island. It was fun. What a wonderful day. And I made a mate with my bushel, who everybody sees on television all over the world. Fuck you all, man. I didn't mean that nastily, but that was my frustration with the internet. Again, the power that is misunderstood. And then I went back and thought, that's why. Maybe that's why fair isn't understood. I haven't explained it. I'm allowed to swear, and I can't get too excited. But I have the same sort of, damn it, man. People this could work. If I didn't have this technology back then and I was young. But now, I just love my little website. Oh, in case you think, yes, there must be a catch. Well, if my website, our society, 141 of us, and our little things are small. There's lots of videos and shit on there. It's just old-fashioned fucking megabytes. And our name's on there, that maybe somebody will come along and see Never Is Now, one of my books, science fiction. And that's a real story that should have been made into a movie. I mean, Mr. Zubrin from Mars Society thought it was a grand idea in its concept. Seth Shostak from SETI went to Hollywood and they went, oh, no. Jeff Brown is a friend from the island. Movie producer, I need 100 million. I said, that's fucking me from the island, but Jesus. So it's a good idea. Somebody wanted, no, back in Hollywood, Jesus. So anyway, that is hopefully if somebody was smart enough and say, hey, let's give this guy a little bit. He doesn't even have a pension. Here's a couple of thousand. Thank you very much. And off you go, chaps. That's the end of it. No more ranting.